Okay, welcome. We're going to get started. Tom Cannon. I am the inaugural Poet Laureate of Oshkosh. And hopefully you guys will spread the word for me, get the word out. Makes it a better chance of me passing on the role to somebody else. So these open mics are great. I'm happy that people are here, people that are sharing. If you want more information about the Poet Laureate Program, you can go to my website, thomascannonauthor.com. And I have a Facebook group. We do Oshkosh Poet Laureate. People can talk about poetry, share poetry if they wish. Quite a few people here tonight are in that group. So we'll start out with Tom tonight. Tom Butt is going to come up and read. He always has some...
Well, good evening, fellow poetry lovers. Death stands above me, whispering low, I know not what into my ear. Of his strange language, all I know is, there is not a word of fear. First poem was inspired by an ancient haiku. O snail, climb Mount Fuji, but slowly, slowly. It's entitled Homeric Gastropods Throughout the Slowly Moving Ages. The snail stops, halts at the cold-footed base of Zen Mountain, the ever-ascending tower of transcendence, whose sentient peaks breach the color box of clouds, to reach out and touch the beautiful blank face of Nirvana Anonymous. The snail's ultra-max goal is to reach the top of Zen Mountain, where that old pearly wisdom is imparted, where absolute chilling peace dwells, where beauty, perfect health, and total joy prevails. A true paradise where even winds blush to blow. Looking up at the looming and overwhelming heights to be attained a snail's size, when a novel idea visits its small universal mind. Looking back at its long line of slime that glistens with moonbeam sheen, the seeker in the shell sees itself smoothly sliding back to where else but to the grind heap that is forever Snailville. Snailville and its raging inflation, bustling crime, ergot pandemics, moral flattening, infrastructure erosion, rife with heartless escargot raiders. Mixed also with the snail's vampiric depression and colonic anguish. From out of its troubled bowels, a resounding no way roars forth as the snail recommits to its formidable quest to scale Zen Mountain. Summoning superhuman strength, the snail flings itself to the slippery gray granite and commences its climb. In the morning, a middle-aged, medium-sized snail was found tipped over, defunct on top of a rock, the analog of a Major League Baseball, MLB well-scuffed baseball, between 2.86 and 2.94 inches in diameter, weighing in at about 5.25 ounces. The very leathery spiracle, the mighty Casey routinely swatted out into the mucky environs of Mudville, USA. It is entitled Aqua Girl and the Love Octopus. All 8 eager tentacles impact Aqua Girl's every pore in sweet, powerful suction excess. The passion pumps feel like 1,000 strong kisses compressed in one all-over bruising pulsation. With coil, pressing coil, Aqua Girl goes banana fish, orgasmic, as her fins fold in post-ecstatic exhaustion. The neighborhood foghorn sounds, the call for supper time and waving rest. The big hollow boom heard the love octopus renders one last loving flick, then leaves in an inky cloud of regret and caution. Totally squeezed through, Aqua Girl floats back in an envelope of languorous bubbles to her marital clam bed. Blithely recalling the magic stirring sequence of 8 taps on the coral black back door, Aqua Girl, knowing what's coming, begins fixing jellyfish loaf with a crumble of barnacle. Prepping a seaweed salad, she wonders what mood, bad or better, her husband will be in when he stumbles home from the local sandbar. Wincing from sore ribs, Aqua Girl dabs her anxious eyes with an electric eel and awaits, and not that long. Loud, angry snorts are heard advancing. The front door clam lips tear open as the red, drunken nose of Rory the seahorse enters and stiffens. "I smell octopi pucker," Rory declares. Aqua Girl excitedly prays the treat of steaming lobster pie will again turn the tide. It's kind of a gothic conceit, ominously titled "The House That Dripped Uric Acid." A house is an entity, almost humanoid. The steps are teeth, the doors its mouth, the windows its eyes, the walls its skin, the floor its bone, the basement its stomach, the attic its brain, the chimney its soul. Welcome, come on in. As you enter the oral foyer, a red shag rug arches up and then begins to undulate inexorably towards you. Home sweet home never tasted this good. And the inevitable, the paid-for commercial poem. For the night owls, for the early birds, for the line crew, for the shoulders to lean on, for the mentors, for the tough mothers, for everyday heroes, for the trailblazers, for the last to leave, for the go-getters, for the dedicated, for the ever-ready, for those who can think ahead, for the multitaskers, for the problem solvers, for the troubadours, for the backs that don't break, for the ones who get it done. Shingles doesn't care.
A spiritual event for any geologist, Iceland's mid-Atlantic ridge, one of the few accessible places where continents tear apart and create land, an occasional upwelling of magma to seal the wounds. A raven casts one fathomless black eye down at me from the volcanic rocks. Holder of prophecies, harbinger of bad luck, he screams at me. Just passing through, I call an apology. I'm knocked to the ground and blood seeps through my hair. A flap of scalp plasters to my forehead. My husband yanks me to my feet as an Icelandic gull wheels for another pass at me. My husband pulls me along and we run for the car. A noise like laughing follows our retreat.
My name is Ruth, and I want to do a quick shameless plug for the Oshkosh Area Writers Club. We meet the first and third Saturday of each month at 10 a.m. in the lower level meeting room of the Oshkosh Public Library. I'm going to share with you something I wrote. Well, you'll tell it's very dated, and although some of the references are dated, I think it still holds true today. It's called Just Say Yes. Last summer, I made a decision that changed my life. No, I didn't decide to have a baby or change careers or sojourn to a foreign country. It was simply a silly personal pact designed to keep me from wallowing on the sofa. It works like this. Someone invites you to do something, and if your schedule permits, you say yes. Say, for example, someone asks you to go rock climbing. If you're like me, you're thinking, A, I've never done it, B, I can't be any good at it, and 3, I probably ain't going to like it. But under my new plan, you say yes. The result? You discover you get dizzy when you're 6 feet up looking down, clinging to rock stubble with a tight leather contraption around your legs that is slightly more comfortable than a thong, which thankfully no one has invited me to wear. The point is, despite apprehensions, I did it anyways. And if one continues down this path, a funny thing happens. You don't get so weirded out by the idea of taking a risk. You begin to look forward to meeting new people and doing things you never previously considered. You might even start initiating such opportunities yourself. I'll admit it wasn't all glamorous. Sometimes those are just a phone call from a friend inviting me for a walk or a family member wondering if I want to hang around outside by the grill. Other times were more memorable, like watching Stomp perform at the Widener Center or participating on stage during a performance of the Vagina monologues. When my friend said, "Let's do Chicago," I said yes. It didn't matter whether she meant the city, the band, or the musical. I was in. Is this really happening? I might wonder as an attractive man flirts with me across the restaurant table. Or how did I get here as I soak in an outdoor hot tub enjoying wine and appetizers with a dozen strangers watching a lunar eclipse in the middle of Maine? None of these things wouldn't have happened to me if I had turned down an invitation. Well, I never put myself in a position where I could be harmed, and there are some experiences I prefer to keep to myself. Making that pact changed me. I stopped waiting for opportunities and created them. When the first snow arrived, I organized my own fellowship to see the final Lord of the Rings movie. One night, I'm washing dishes to the bare naked ladies in the privacy of my own home. The next night, I'm dancing with strangers while the band plays live at the rave. On a work night. Closing in on a year of my experiment, I'm no longer compelled to accept every offer that comes my way. Not long ago, I opted to spend a rainy afternoon listening to public radio and surfing the web on my laptop, my favorite treat spread on the table while the rest of the world went on without me. I understand now, though, that the expression living a full life is not about keeping a bulging social calendar. It's about everything I do. That with every conversation I engage in, every place I go or every new thing I learn, my world gets a little larger. And in this instance, size does matter.
That was great. Thanks for sharing. And as you can tell, I'm the Poet Laureate, all about poetry. But if we want people to actually come and read, we got to expand a little bit. And you can see in Dixie's piece and in Ruth's piece, there's poetry in writing. Writers, I think, have poetry inside them as they try to figure out the best way to communicate with somebody. And just writing is so thoughtful so that you say the important things. And sometimes the important thing is you telling yourself as well. In that vein, the first poem I'm going to read tonight is a poem that I kind of took from a chapter in a works in progress, a novel that I'm submitting, trying to get published. And so I wrote a poem kind of distilled down, and I think it really worked well to figure out what my main character is going through, what her problems are, who she is. So the first poem I'm going to read tonight is No Shelter. She embraced good living like a rainstorm, having lost the need to wreck her innocence like a wave attacking a sandcastle. She only drank then and now to do the rain dance, hands outreached to catch droplets of peace. Alcohol and drugs had been a day at the beach that left her raw and burned. The rain turned cold. Maybe it was the week after the baby was born, when he stopped helping out. The gale of old boyfriends picked up, tore at her clothes, taunted her with whispered torrents. In the empty house, she tried to warm herself enough to stop shivering. Embraced by her own naked arms, good living tailed off her into puddles. Thank you. Let somebody else go. Who wants to go next? Cal, please.
You are tall.
$10 stand.
So I wrote this in a fit of whimsy last week. Apparently I recently found out I'm short on vitamin D, and apparently I'm supposed to learn how to eat more eggs. And I don't really care for eggs, so I wrote a fun short little story. Eggs. Vile, disgusting, odoriferous future creatures. I detest them. Not the future part of them, just the egg part, at least the culinary varieties. But I stand before a precipice where I must now confront these ovuloid things, these singular cradles of life so delicate and yet so important to both their own futures and our own. The old riddle, a box without hinges, key or lid, yet within golden treasure is hid, comes to mind, but I'm not sure if I can muster the courage to wander the dungeon, face the monsters, and secure the loot. But alas, I must do so, for I am put upon a quest, but by no maiden nor king, no, by my own doctor. He might be a wizard. For you see, of late I've been suffering from some uncertain ailment, most malign, extreme weakness despite my fit body. Joints tortured by unseen vice grips, tightened by equally unseen gasps, and a severe pall over my mood, leading me to withdraw entirely from the world of life and light. Finally reaching my breaking point, I sought help. The doctor, wizard, asked myriad questions and finally resorted to alchemy after his inquiries were spent. Ancient and arcane alchemies indeed. When he asked me to roll up my sleeve, I was puzzled. Well, it's just a bit of blood, that's all I require, he said too calmly. Just a bit? Well, 3 full vials. I went pale before the needle even struck my arm, but at my wit's end and desperate to remove this ailment, I succumbed and blacked out shortly thereafter. 2 days went by and the doctor, evil wizard, I'm convinced now, finally contacted me with news of his alchemical experiments. Mr. Calcifer, I'm afraid you're quite deficient in a certain critical ichor, vitamin D. I believe, based on my recent experiments and testings, this is the primary cause of your ailment. Is it serious? I questioned cautiously. Oh, not at all, just eat more eggs, he chuckled. I purged my stomach at the news. Sir, Mr. Calcifer, are you all right? Wiping my chin and gagging a bit more, I righted myself and responded, Fine, so eggs it is. I was so hot I could probably have cooked one on my forehead. Yes, especially the yolks. That's where all the nutrients are, including the vitamin D. I retched again, unashamedly this time. So now I face an age-old enemy, eggs, the culinary variety. Eggs, the entire host of them, have been my adversaries since time immemorial. I've never liked them, and as a wee lad suffered a terrifically traumatic experience of being force-fed them by my very own vicious wet nurse. She wanted me off the tit, good woman. Despite my protestations, she grabbed my chin, opened my gullet up wide, and shoveled a forkful of seditious scrambled eggs down my throat. The result was similar to the one described above. But I'm a man now, and as a man I must face my ovoid fears and hopefully find the sunny side of sunny side up. The eggs are arrayed against me. However, in their innumerable masses they have a plethora of preparations prepared against me, most of which I'm barely familiar with. I'm outnumbered and outknowledged, for I've never even cooked an egg, let alone eaten one. Surely I'll be overwhelmed. At the front lines are the scrambled eggs. They're foot soldiers, easy to produce and easy to digest. Next are the sunny side ups and the over easies, cousins in arms from what I understand, but extremely tactical. Behind them are the poached eggs, the lieutenants, beguiling, backstabbing bastards, while experts in their craft. And commanding the whole charge are the hard-boiled eggs, whose yolks are verdigris to harsh temperaments, and next to them are the soft-boiled eggs, sycophants hoping to latch themselves on to a more advantageous position. Not to mention their reserves, quiche, egg drops, soup, huevos rancheros, eggs benedict, hopefully I can turn some of those to my favor, omelets, the list goes on, ranks upon ranks of eggs in all their varieties. I feel there is no hope. Culinary courage, I invoke you. Inspire me to vanquish my greatest enemy since small childhood. Gather an army of your own liking. Yes, Mistress Culinaria, mollifying muse of my molars. Inspired at last, I gather my troops, brassicas of all types to make up the left flank, radishes, broccoli, cabbage, and especially horseradish, my trusted steed of spice. The alliums to make up the right flank, onions, of course, good cooking does not exist without them, garlic and scallions as valiant lieutenants. Animal proteins for the middle flank, sausage, bacon, and cheese, my steadfast companions in the kitchen. And in the reserve, the capsicums along with the herbs and spices, few in number, but known for their prowess when the fight leaves the fire and goes into the fry pan. The battle is vicious. Shells crack, veggies are cut up, oil spatters, alliums are seared, cheese melts, fingers are burned, eggs sizzle. Spices are lost in corners, never to be seen again. In a surprise move, I bring forth cooked wild rice and cracker crumbs. Surely the egregious eggs wouldn't expect this. And hurling my new shock troops forward, they mingle with the egg in hot battle while dancing on the skillet. Both sides fight valiantly. After the smoke settles, a macabre hush falls over the battlefield stove. A light shines through the window while Beethoven plays in the background. A lone warrior stands before the last of the egg, armed with nothing but a lowly fork, the shadow of its tines following over the vanquished. I sat there, fork in hand, digesting what had just happened. I realized that I could indeed cook, no conquer eggs, and keep them down. All in all, it was an excellent outcome.
My name is Elisabeth, and I'll be reading 3 poems today. Okay. Maybe I'll play the fool, laugh and pretend to have all the answers sewn sweetly into the lining of my long gray coat. Maybe I'll walk both ways to the sea at eve, stare into the glimmer of the dark sequin waves, rip the dying foam from the seams of the rocky shore, displace my fomented screams, share a smoke with lapsing strangers, chat about our oblique fondness for the crushing weight of all things temporal and eternal, and then I'll recede into the lost black night by a lone and careless lie. Maybe I'll chase the unsure winds, close them up with a catch and a snag of a resolute needle, to finally shut the felt lids of time, to mend our bent, grieving shoulders, to piece together at least a better kind of loneliness with my dagger pins from sordid palms. Thank you. Okay. Oh, the sky collects untouching fragments of fainting conversation as the mallards drift on. Oh, what it is to want to want. We ease along the wind and quietly eclipse the blind hours of ether. A soft lavender rests on the warm air and darkened silhouettes. In such passing, do you cut time gray? And who are the true thieves of the world? The water, all blue, us, missing already how it shut. Oh, the sky, mirror of a mirror. I go to sit on the stones by the water, but instead is a shore where I crouch to watch the broken shells shove and settle against and together with each soft end of a wave. All right, here's the last one. Shadowing dusk as its lurid lid shut, she and I walk blind beneath the trees' sway, fanned by the smirking wind. Our arms brim with bottles of Prosecco and Lambrusco. Afar off, an orange glow brews. It lures us near, off the cut path, through limbs of spruce that gnash, until the coarse encasement ends, and the smooth open land cradles 3 women, crouched with sticks extended to the ripening fire. We each embrace in tenderness, talk and take such sweet suck from the coughing bottles, dancing between the eaves' velvet cloak. Our legs gleam amber from the fire's curling ruth. Crickets chant out from the ever-looming murk. They fill the hollows as we speak wild and swell, cupping constellations by the numb of our hands as if to tempt them from the sky. Our faces flush rouge against the pale moon, bodies limp with wine. We lay on the weeping grass, arms draped with fingers wrapped. Oh, to be together like this, forgetting where our edges fight. Together like this as the quiet hour blankets us and we drift from murmur to murmur, peering into all the lonely rooms we will never fill. Our eyes rest on the night's turning face. We trace along its silver bead and plead for all to stay. A cool hand wipes my cheek, but the tear still falls into the shell of my ear, just as the stars still blink shut and the crowned night sighs away from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabeth. That was great. Made me think of, there's a definition of poetry that is the best words in the best order. And that's what your poetry made me think of. That was Coolidge, and I could pretend that I remember his first name, but I don't. But that is a great definition. That was a great poetry. Joyce is going to read to us.
This one is from my childhood, and it's called 90 Years Between. I was 10 when someone first called me beautiful, a cousin in the loosest sense of the word, in the nursing home after a fall on the ice. Couldn't let his widowed daughter chop wood. After 90, stuff just don't heal right. His hard, gnarled hands picked me up and pulled me onto his wheelchair, on the way to a party that so few get to have. What's it like to be old? I asked. I was 10, thin as a rail, amazed at the thought of living for 100 years. He smiled at me. Right now? Boring. I snuggled into his arms and he stroked my face. The only thing I regret is that I'm too old to marry you, when you're old enough to marry. I laughed. You're teasing. You ask all the nurses to marry you. Only the good-looking ones, he said. And you'll be beautiful when you're grown. I didn't think of beauty then. Mainly had skinned knees. Haircuts came from bubblegum accidents. Then suddenly one day, boys looked better than frogs. Barely. Some had fine words. Sweet and tempting, but I'd heard them all before. When flirting gained Earl and I half a box of chocolates from the nurse's station. Young tongues had no charms compared to all the flattery that 100 years of chivalry had shown me. Ben Franklin praised older women. Let me now praise older men. Their words are fine. A few chocolates are a date. And if they ever misbehave, you can always outrun them, or put the brakes on their wheelchair. And this one is dedicated to a friend of mine. This is her eulogy poem, and her name is Carol. The color for Carol. What is the right color to remember Carol? Not pink, no matter the ribbon, too frilly and pretty, too soft and gentle, neither black nor white. No matter how much of her life was spent in neat lines and well-typed cards. Certainly not gray. Too much of her life was spent in the gray. Not quite married, not quite sick, not poor enough. Not red, the color of passion and violence. She was librarian and accountant. That would never do. Perhaps the best was the color she loved best, purple. The color of royalty and of bruises. Some bruises go all the way to the soul, but overall, the purple thrown as a cloak of dignity to make a queen proud.
Thank you, Joyce. Those are great and powerful. And a little bit I'm going to talk about my journey, how being the Poet Laureate has kind of set me on a journey, increased my passion for poetry, which I already liked. Patrick, the next reader, kind of on the journey with me. When we started, I was like, we shouldn't rhyme poetry, rhyming poetry, let's not do it. And he was all, rhyming poetry. Tonight I got some rhyming poetry, and now Patrick's off the rhyming kick. So
Actually, I'll bring one back.
all right.
So in honor of number 12's imminent departure from Green Bay, I'll bring on discount immunization check. So bad man Aaron Rodgers of Green Bay does things his unique, creative way. A few months ago, he said he was immunized. Turns out he's unvaccinated and getting stigmatized for putting teammates and league at risk. The retribution has been quite brisk. Sponsorship ended with Prevea Health. Frustrating, but won't dent his massive wealth. State Farm might have moved on as well. Terry Bradshaw gets a spot. More they don't tell. Against the Chiefs, number 12 won't start tomorrow. Jordan Love will give Wisco joy or sorrow. Some compare A-Rod to Kyrie Irving, who from the Brooklyn Nets is swerving. While Kyrie refuses to get poked, his status was never cloaked. Rodgers went on the Pat McAfee show. Cancel culture he blamed for his woe. A few times he went over the top. Quoting MLK was a huge flop. Arguing politics is a sham. Golly, what system is immune from folly? Of excellent points he had a few. The central arguments were not new. Health and medicine should be apolitical. Providers who don't price gouge are atypical. About vaccination, some are quite mean. The consistent truth we should glean in a situation worth of dramaturgy is conversation, not controversy. We must balance the need to protect and the urge to constantly correct with the privilege of personal choice. One or many should not be robbed of voice. That's this one. And on a different note, a non-rhyming note, I read here the last time my poem, The Voting Booth. I think I wrote it about 5 years ago. I had redone it for an upcoming anthology for the Oshkosh Writers Group. I think it's significantly different enough that it merits a rereading. So that I guess it's The Voting Booth for 2023. It calls to me, softly, gingerly, respectfully. It's time, it whispers. Without delay, I journey to the dance hall. Everything is as it should be. I know the workers. They know me. I flash my IDs. They hand me a ballot and motion me through. Warm up, over. Against the wall, I see it. Unremarkable to some, perhaps to most. It's only a booth, they say. There are many like it. But they are mistaken. Each is private and unique. I step forward, softly, gingerly, respectfully. It's time, I whisper, echoing my partner. No response. I don't need one. We both know what comes next. After all that has happened, after all the bitterness and nastiness, it stays the same, awaiting our dance, like it always has and like it always will. I take another step forward. It embraces me. Now I'm safe from partisanship, intolerance, noise. Now I'm safe to speak my mind, be a citizen, help democracy work. There's so much history here, countless sacrifices, so I can dance. I hesitate, unworthiness washing over me. I struggle, knowing the dance's importance. You are my partner, it croons. I deem you worthy. It cannot be denied. My hand trembling, I make pen meet paper, softly, gingerly, respectfully, choosing politicians and policies, changing city, state, and country. I managed to finish. It waited for me. It helped me, like it always does, like it always will, such a faithful friend. I break its embrace and slide the ballot in the machine. That was quite a dance, I murmur, wiping sweat off my brow. Thank you. No, thank you, it murmurs, until I call again. I take my leave, softly, gingerly, respectfully, still in awe of what happened, until the next dance, indeed. And the final piece is something I wrote earlier today. I was trying to channel my thoughts on like the current political discourse. So it's called I Bleed with My Country. My country bleeds, and I bleed with it. Incivility, division, strife. My country's blood is my blood. Its dreams are my dreams. Its future is my future. What blood, dreams, and future have us left? What awaits us both? But I remind myself, my country has bled before I could bleed. Through revolution and war, civil, world, and cold, through oppression and sin, towards those who were here first, those who were here forced, those who came here foreign. My country has clotted before I could clot, through dialogue, movements, protests, amendments, elections, reparations. Healing is incomplete. Pain is deep. Scabs are numerous. Yet some have fallen off. Some more might fall off too. Our country has bled, clotted, and scabbed over. I will bleed, clot, and help the new scabs fall away. For both of us, for all of us, for you.
Kind of envisioned my wife, Linda, sharing Patrick's first poem on Facebook. It made me remind me if anybody wants to see these open mics and other things. I have a YouTube channel at thomascannonauthor.com. And then while I'm on plugs, in May of this year, I'm going to be speaking at the Lakefly Writers Conference. It's held every May right here downtown. It's a very affordable and a very classy, quality workshop for writers. Our motto is everybody has a story to tell, and we want to help you tell it. And so,
I think Michael Perry.
no way, wow.
Perry?
They're probably almost as excited as finding out I'm going to be there.
That was the rumor.
That's why Michael's coming.
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. Michael Perry is, statewide, he's probably the top author. Okay, so now I'm going to read a couple of my poems. When I started doing the Poet Laureate Program, kind of like what it is about poetry, what's important about it. And I think poetry, raw writing, but especially poetry, is just a healthy thing to do. And one of the healthy habits, the top thing people say is have gratitude. And poetry is a great way to study the people and the things around you and give homage to those things in your life. You can share gratitude by thinking about it, by taking your mind back to record what happened, and then to share it. And the other thing is to savor things. You know, I think poets are great at that because we're looking at the details, we're looking at the sights, we're looking at the smells, all the senses, and we're looking for those things that other people might miss. When we're taking a moment, we're saying, this is so great. However, I've run out of those poems. So what we're going to tonight is stuff, and actually I haven't run out of them, but I wanted to explore a little bit tonight, kind of free writes poems that come from my journal. I found a couple years ago that actually just journal entries, I just kind of write them as poems. So I have some poems that are just kind of free writes, where they started as free writes, and hopefully I edited them, and hopefully you guys will enjoy them. This one is kind of weird. It's titled, Fainting Goats. Fainting goats are robots, falling down from all their frauds. As soon as their circuits overload, what they can handle defined by code. Switch off to avoid all strife. After the badness happens, they reboot back to life. At a certain point, it's good to be a robot, to not be able to do what you ought, to let the world and yourself fall apart. I apologize for let my psyche out, but here's the next one. It's also a little weird. It's called Armored Truck. And it's kind of stemmed from, if you see, like in Iraq, the big armored vehicles, the Oshkosh trucks, when they're in traffic, they don't want to stop. So they just kind of nudge their way through. They're big enough, they just knock them out of the way. And I wanted to make an allusion to that. So Armored Truck. The armored truck rumbles over the debris of you and me and them. The lone driver is neither jostled or aware of our screams. Insulated, climate-controlled, outward instruments turned off, limbs falling on the roof, sound like distant fireworks. Gates give way with a push. The lone driver hears no sound from the stones thrown by the villagers. But eventually the truck arrives in the occupied streets of Allied forces. The lone driver opens a hatch and lays waste to what he was fighting for. Here's another one. I'm not sure where it came from, but it's called An Ask. I guess I'm asking you to tear away my scars with your teeth. Peel at them until your lips are red and you taste the iron of my blood on your tongue. I don't want to poison you, but I might ask that you dissolve my hurts inside you. Okay. There was no need. At your funeral, my organs floated, bumped against my bones. My breath saturated my teeth, but I couldn't expel it. I had to curl my toes to keep my feet in my shoes. The ground was already pulling you into itself, its fingers on your jowls. A vortex beneath your skin was siphoning you away. There was no need. We were already so far apart. Yeah. And I guess I'll end maybe a little bit of savoring. This poem is from a long time ago. Before my wife and I were married, I had not seen the 5-year-old girl that is now my stepdaughter. So she came out of her apartment where her and her mother lived. She ran into my arms, and this is the poem that came to me. Circles. In circles we go, where we meet, turning, laughing, talking. Unstoppable we touch each other's faces, entwining, giggling, hugging, until we are dizzy, so we do not stop. All the rest is too much, all the rest is waiting, looking, hoping, praying to steal. One more moment to fly into a spin, we go crying, loving, dancing. 1996. All right, unless we got everybody that wants to go, we can conclude the night. Thank you, New Moon, for having us, hosting us, and serving us. This is a great venue. Thank you for coming. Thanks for listening.